Oh man, you're rolling the dice anytime you let me be in charge of the audio cues, but I think we're doing so far okay for this episode. I'm Jim Reed. Welcome to another week of the Rec Poker Podcast Forums Edition. I'm so happy to be here. You can find me at Bluffsterini in the home games or at Hold'em_Steelers on Twitter. And I'm joined by our regular panel of Rec Poker fantastic folks. Tell us a little bit about yourself, fantastic folks, and where the other fantastic folks can reach you.
I am Chris Jones. I'm 5x5 on PokerStars and Twitter.
I'm John Somsky, and I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Rabman50 everywhere.
I am Taylor Moss. In the Rec Poker home game, I am Gopher Boy TJM. And on Twitter, you can find me at Taylor_Moss.
I'd like to thank website AMP and the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino for their generous support that makes this podcast possible. And we are here. We are playing in the Rec Poker home game, trying to steal each other's chips and win another bronze pin. Just like every week, we have taken a forum post from the Rec.Poker forums, and we're going to talk about it here with the group. So this week, we are looking at a post by Chapo, one of our international members, and the post is called Live Tourney. That's right, live, down under, because apparently in Australia, they know how to handle a pandemic. So they are playing live poker down there. It's very exciting for them. And Chapo wants to write in. He says, "Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if I butchered this, so bear with me." Again, we go through these forum posts here in audio and video, but if you want to get the real meat of the discussion, you should go to rec.poker, check out the forum post yourself. There's actually a link in your show notes right here. So there's some great details in there that we won't get to, but ultimately what it comes down to is Chapo is holding 10-10 pre-flop in a tournament where he respects the field, and we get a point where it's raised in front, and they're in a spot where they have a real decision to make here between taking a passive and an aggressive line. I want to hear from Rob first because Chapo, our friend Troy from Australia, mentioned Rob specifically, I think because Rob's been working through our book study where we talk about ways to play hands like this in a way that sort of maximizes your edge. Rob, was there any first takes off this?
Yeah, Troy has been pretty active in our book studies, and we recently completed a book study called The Game Plan. And in the game plan, it's geared towards recreational players that are rather new, not very experienced, and find themselves in a tournament with a lot of what we might call crushers. So they'd be people that definitely have an edge in a skill level over you. So when you're in that type of environment, the game plan gives you specific actions to take with each hand based on the action around you. So one of the things it tries to do is it tries to be very aggressive to take away that skill advantage from the more accomplished players by giving them tougher decisions to make. You are making their decisions tougher instead of them letting them make your decisions tougher. So one of the things I said in this particular spot, I think 10-10 is definitely a 3-bet jam. To 3-bet would be, most of his chips. Well, 3-bet would be all of his chips because I think there was 10,000 was the open. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the current blind level is 500, 1,000. And the under the gun open to 2,500. And then there's a couple flats. So the pot's pretty big already by the time it gets to him.
Right, so it's 2,500. This is a perfect squeeze spot, like we talked in the last episode, the last podcast we did. It was definitely a squeeze spot. But by squeezing, he'd be looking at, let's just do the math real quick. 3 times would be 7,500. Then you add 2,500 for each caller, right? So now you're up to over 10,000 chips. So at that point in time, you're looking at, this is just a jam. And that's basically what I told him there, because by jamming, first of all, the original raiser could have a real hand, but he doesn't have to have that strong a hand. We know by the two people that called that their hands are probably less than 10-10, and they're just along for the ride to see if they can hit a flop. So by raising, if the first person folds, you're probably going to get folds out of the other two, and you're putting a tougher decision on the people that you think have a skill edge on you.
Yeah, and last week we talked about a hand with Jack pre-flop facing a squeeze, and so that's one of the reasons we want to talk about this hand this week, because it's just illustrative of the difference that stack sizes make, where you are in the tournament, the ranges that you can put other people on based on the assumptions you're making about them and the actions taken so far. And tens, we said last week, as Rob pointed out, there's 3 ways to play jacks pre-flop, and they're all wrong. Tens aren't that far off either. There's going to be a lot of second guessing with pocket tens, but just like we finished last week by saying, I know Taylor will like this. Poker is a game of incomplete information, and so you can't just proceed as though you get to be right. You don't get to be right. You get to make educated guesses that are going to be wrong sometimes, and the better poker players are right more often than they're wrong, and it's just a matter of degree when it comes to that sort of a thing. So yeah, and the game plan, I think specifically, as Rob points out, is trying to encourage recreational players to be more aggressive with these spots where it's kind of a coin flip. I think recreational players tend to play a little more passively in these spots and to try and see how it turns out before they get their chips in the middle. Chris, did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I tend to agree with that this is a spot where we want to take an aggressive action. And I think the interesting question is, I think I agree that this is probably a jam, but where it's just on that edge of kind of an awkward stack size where we could choose to make a smaller 3-bet here, and potentially protect ourselves a little and save a little bit of sort of tournament life in just a spot, especially since we have an under the gun open. I mean, if we've got 32K, there's 10K in the pot right now. If we 3-bet this to 12K, 14K, we preserve that 18 to 20 big blind stack. If we need to fold these, we potentially could to an under the gun shove. I'm assuming that all the players have us covered in this spot. So that would be the one thing that I think we could make a decision. But I think regardless of what we do on sizing, I think we should be taking an aggressive action here. And it's a lot different than if we're just, if this is the under the gun open and it folds to us with tens, I think we can consider a flat given these sort of stack depths and those tens, and just kind of like playing that heads up, let's go figure that out. But now that we've got these 2 intervening callers, there's so much dead money in here. We've got a decent hand. They have shown probably they don't have as good a hand as us. So I like that aggressive action, and I'm really kind of torn about the sizing here. Whether that shove is almost too big is the only. I in game I would probably be not shoving, but it could be a mistake.
No, and I should actually clarify. So it goes raise, call. We end up calling as played, and then the big blind makes a big raise. Then that reopens the action, and I think it's at that point that we were saying the shove.
Oh, sure.
No, I was saying to shove pre-flop.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, perfect.
The
Thanks,
first
Because
John.
it's a third of the 3-bet is going to be at least a third of your stack.
I see. Yep.
And so according to the game plan, and that's what we're referencing here, that's a shove automatic. If you're going to play, you're going to shove. You're either going to fold or shove.
Yeah.
Great.
And
Thank you.
I agree with a lot of what Chris is saying. Like, he's making a lot of good points here. To talk about the sizing part of it, the reason why I don't want to 3-bet to a not all in size here is because of what our stack to pot ratio looks like after we reach a flop. So hypothetically, say we raise to 10K, 14K, 15K, whatever it may be. Let's assume we pick the smallest size of, call it 10K, and we get a call. Well, now we started with 32 big blinds. We've put in 10 big blinds. We've got 22 behind. The pot out there is greater than 22. So our stack to pot ratio on the smallest size that we pick is below 1, which means now we've got one action to take on the flop. And with a hand like pocket tens, you're rarely going to be like, yep, this is a flop where I am extremely comfortable just going all in and knowing that I'm going to get called by worse. So you're also in a spot with a stack to pot ratio less than 1 of a spot where you're not really intending on folding. If the flop comes out queen high, are you really going to fold? If it comes out jack high or king high, are you going to fold? Maybe if it's ace high, you can find a fold, but then, you know, who knows, you're making the right decision there too. So I hate that spot of having a stack to pot ratio less than 1. I had just 3-bet and I've got a vulnerable hand like pocket tens. I much prefer jamming. If I take it down there and I could have potentially got more, I don't care. I'm fine about that. There is 2.5, 2.5, 2.5 big blinds from the open, the call, and the call, so 7.5, plus another 2.5 from the blinds. There's 10 big blinds out there for us to win. We can win 33% of our stack if we jam and get folds from everyone. That is a massive win. That is huge. I don't need to get greedy and try and win a few more extra big blinds off slight EV other decisions. So to me, it's jam, and there's no other sizing for 3-bets.
And the way Rob pointed out earlier, you know, one of the things we're trying to do is make our opponents have more difficult decisions. So if you're in the spot where you're like, I'm either going to jam or I'm going to get to the flop with an SPR of 1, then you're letting players with hands like ace king, ace queen, you're letting them find out if they got ahead or not before they put their money in. And, you know, a hand like that, if they're going to put their money in, make them put it in pre-flop before they know if they're going to hit or not. Because when that flop comes out and they don't see the ace or the king, they're not going to put those chips in. You're not going to win those chips. But the time that the ace or the king does come, they are. So you're really kind of free rolling them on those extra chips that you're not putting in the middle pre-flop, where you get a chance to, you know, make a legit coin flip there.
That's really interesting. So what the opposite side of that is, because we have an under the gun raiser, the thinking I have is that I am not folding this post flop unless it comes like, you know, ace king queen or something on the flop, right? But I am potentially folding to an under the gun reshove to my 3-bet, to a 4-bet under the on pre-flop. And it allows me to still have a playable stack, and at those times when that really strong under the gun range. So it's just interesting. I mean, I may be playing these spots completely wrong, so I'd be curious. But like, that's my thinking in these kind of spots, is like, if I take that smaller sizing, because tournament life is just so important, I give myself that one shot to, and if they have ace king and it comes king 7-5, I'm losing my stack anyway. But if they have aces, I'm probably leaving this hand with 20 big blinds. So that's what I'm protecting myself against, not against them outdrawing me. I'm going to lose those hands anyway, but it's more like those really premium hands that can 4-bet shove me.
Yeah, what I don't like about that is how much of your stack you would have to commit to the 3-bet to then ultimately have to fold. Because then say we go with the smallest sizing of 10 big blinds.
Yeah.
We would have to call 22 to win. It'd be 7.5 plus 32 times 2. So we're talking 70. We'd have to call 22 to potentially win 70. So the odds that we need there are, you know,
It's a jam.
not that
call.
like we're never in that bad of a spot. If we theoretically give them jacks plus and ace king, we have 33% equity there, which we chip wise, if we have to call 22 to win 70, we're getting the right price.
Right.
So we would literally have to put them on a hand that doesn't have ace king at all in it, saying they're never shoving ace king for that fold to then be a correct decision.
And I think
So-
the original jam that we do as a squeeze, we're taking his entire range, his entire opening range. Now, if this guy is only opening jacks plus ace king, I mean, I can't feature that. I think his range is going to be bigger than that in this kind of a tournament with this type of opponents that he's talking about. So his range is going to be wider than that to begin with. So already we know that we've got at least 33%, if not more, equity when we jam pre-flop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with all that.
And then to bring one more point in there, what Rob started talking about here, if we're in a field where we feel like we're outmatched, to 3-bet and then fold with a hand that probably has the right price is just burning. You know, we have to put the pressure on those other players if we feel like we are in a tournament where we're slightly outmatched. We have to put the pressure on them. We can't allow them to put pressure on us and get us to fold in spots where we shouldn't. And I think that is what would happen or could potentially happen if we choose the small 3-bet sizing.
Well, let's take just a little over 30 seconds to hear from Jonathan Little, and then I want to tease a little more out of that point there, Taylor. Here we go.
Have you ever wondered whether you should call a preflop raise or 3-bet instead? What do you do when you have a flush draw? Do you raise it or do you just call? What do you do with ace king when you miss the flop? Are you tired of guessing about what the right play is with your particular hand? Well, my name is Jonathan Little, and I am a 2-time World Poker Tour champion and creator of PokerCoaching.com, where we offer over 1,000 interactive hand quizzes where you play a hand and then get real-time feedback from our world-class pros. Don't guess and don't stress. Just register for your free account at PokerCoaching.com/recpoker right now.
Boy, the only thing stressful about that is me making sure to press pause quickly enough so that we don't mess up the audio cue. You know, that gets me sweating a little bit. Yeah, Jonathan Little, one of the great names in poker. Also, I want to talk about Steve Fredland and how other than just playing poker and being the founder here at Rec Poker, he also helps small businesses thrive instead of just survive, especially in today's hard times. So if you or someone you know owns a small business, go to smallbusiness.com and find some fun ways to work with Steve where he can help you out. So Taylor, I think I really like this idea because in certain circumstances, when I'm playing in a tournament where I feel like I actually have an edge on the field, I might turn down a flip spot because I feel like I can preserve that edge for a later point where maybe I can make a better decision than some of the other people in the tournament. And that's how I'm going to profit in the tournament. It sounds like you're saying if you're in a tournament where you think you're kind of giving up a skill edge to the field, that you should really be pressing your opportunities to take these coin flips because it kind of neutralizes their skill edge. Am I capturing that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, to simplify like that point, it's not to say like, hey, you know, just get super aggressive and go after flips. And hey, I had, you know, Queen Jack, but I thought they had a middle pair. So I went all in to try and get into a flip spot. That's not the extrapolation we should make here. But what we should be thinking is, hey, you know, on the spot, I'm running the numbers in my head, and I think this is probably a break-even spot for me. If we're outmatched in the tournament, it potentially leans us towards take that break-even spot. If we are superior to, you know, the rest of the people, it's a spot where we shouldn't be taking that. To put it another way, like if I was playing poker with, you know, nephews, nieces, cousins and stuff that never play poker, but I, you know, have played exclusively, and I get into a spot where they flip over their cards to me and show me exactly what they have. And I've got pocket tens, but they've got ace king offsuit. And I know that I'm a 54 to 46% favorite. Every other game of poker, I'd take that. But if I'm, you know, that far ahead of them, I'm going to turn it down and just be like, you know what, I'm going to win a different way. But given that spot in the World Series of Poker with, you know, legends all around me, show me that exact spot and I'm snap calling and saying, yep, let's run this and see if I can, you know, get my winnings here rather than trying to outplay you post flop.
And there's something to that, right? I mean, we should be playing a mix of most of the tournaments you play, you should have a skill edge on the field. Okay, so that should be part of the way that you determine whether this is a good tournament to play or not. That doesn't mean you can't take a shot, and it's fun and it's healthy and it's allowed in your bankroll to play higher stake tournaments or bigger buy-in tournaments, and to take that shot and to have fun. And we're recreational players, so we don't have to be married to our bankroll Kelly criterion in the same way that a professional does. But most of your tournaments, you should be playing against people that you feel like you can beat. So you should be trying to make better decisions than your opponents at every point through the hand. But if you're taking a shot, if you're in the World Series of Poker, to Taylor's point, that's a time to kind of embrace that opportunity to push that edge. Now, you never make a negative EV decision, but you are, variance is more your friend than the people that are better at poker than you. So not to put too fine a point on it on that front. Any other thoughts there, guys, on this before we close up? Rob, Chris?
I just one thought. I don't know that we actually in this sort of real world scenario, once we do flat and the big blind raises to 10.5K, I don't know if we ever said what we would do. It folds
Good
around
point.
to us. We've got 32K. We've got pocket tens. We've been that small 3-bet sizing from the big blind, and the big blind has us covered. Just quickly, I mean,
Let's talk about it. Yeah, there's no rush.
Where are we
We're
doing?
not on the clock. I mean, because Pet Vet makes a good point in here. So that is addressed in the. That's a good point, Chris. Thanks. Pet Vet Kim, one of our premium members, says that it's a fine spot for a jam pre-flop when it gets to you, as there's already 10K in the pot, and when you flat here, you're set mining, and it's not really profitable given the stacks. And we also get a comment from Doug Drabeck, who talks about how he's a little too passive at times. I don't know if he knows the same Doug Drabeck I know. Magra 44 is in there just spilling chips. He's in such a hurry to get his stack in the middle every time. I love it. It's the way I like to play too. So I think it's correct that in that spot, facing that re-raise out of the blinds, I don't think calling is a correct option. Am I right in that, guys? Does anyone think that calling in that spot is profitable? It's just such a big chunk of your stack. It seems uncontroversial.
Well, you have three decisions, right? You're either going to fold, you're going to call, or you're going to jam. Now, are you ever folding there? I don't know anybody that is. Jamming is better than calling.
Right.
Because you're calling off a third of your chip stack. Like Taylor said, once you get to the flop, you're sitting there with a less than a 1-to-1 stacked pot ratio. So it doesn't make any sense to go into that situation like that. Are you gonna fold when you're less than 1-to-1 with pocket tens? No. So yeah, at that point in time, I think the jam is appropriate. I think what I talked about when I responded to this a little bit is that had he jammed pre-flop before the big blind could act, the big blind could have very well folded. Mm-hmm. King Jack is not a hand that you want to go to battle with. But when you have a raise and 3 callers, it's a beautiful squeeze spot with King Jack if you're in the big blind.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, the big blind had King Jack. And do we know if he actually, I don't know if we would have seen this post if he hadn't flopped a Jack or a King.
He lost. Yeah, he didn't say how it happened. He says, if you want to know the outcome, let me know. It was sick.
Yeah. ...
Yeah.
So he probably flopped a 10 and then, the straight.
And then lost to the straight. Yeah, the old Queen A's.
I love that. That happens so much. Gotta love it.
Well, Chapo, write in and let us know. Let us know how sick it was. We don't mind the bad beat stories here on the Rec Poker podcast. But I do hope people go and check out the forum, because there's a lot of great, like Doug Drabeck goes through and mentions, he breaks down the whole range of hands. People might be doing things in certain spots here. Kim Pet Vet has some really good points. Everyone here in the panel is chipped in, so there's some good nuanced discussion in there as well. Taylor, did you want to cap us off?
Yeah, I was just gonna say one more thing. One of the points that we didn't talk about that he put in the intro to this hand was, it's been a really aggressive table. There's been a lot of 3-betting, a lot of raising. A lot of flop action coming out, essentially just saying it's just been really aggressive, more aggressive than he's used to. And I think we got into our own head of like finally being able to be back and playing live poker when it's been this active, and we see an open and then call, no 3-betting before us. That should really cap our opponent's ranges and make tens even all more profitable to raise from our position. But I think it got to a point of, hey, you know, I'm finally out playing poker. I've got a hand that's playable, and I've got action in front of me that I am comfortable with up until this point. So I'm just going to call. So now I can get to play some poker, because a lot of people get into this spot and they're like, hey, you know, I'm finally back and playing, and stuff hasn't been going well. It's still early on. Do I really shove my entire stack here and potentially lose and have to go home? I didn't really get to play poker. So we have to kind of get out of those thoughts and not make the decision that allows us to play the longest, but give us the decision that allows us to win the most.
I love that. Well, I don't know if anyone can sound smarter than Taylor Moss closing us out today. I'll give everyone a second, but no, that one wears the crown. So I guess I'll just say thanks, everyone. Thanks to the panel. Please, if you're listening to this, we do put these out. If you're listening to this on audio, you might get a little more out of it going to the video format that's available on YouTube, but you can also go to rec.poker and get a free community account. All it takes is an email address and a smile, and we don't even enforce the smile thing. I mean, it's strongly encouraged, but you don't even have to smile. That's totally up to you. But more officially, I'd like to thank Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino, Taylor Moss, Rob Washam, Chris Jones, John Somsky, Website Amp, Chapo, Kim, Pet Vet, everybody.